All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you very much to everyone out there, as always, for watching, for listening. I appreciate y'all very, very much, man. Big shout out to our sponsor today, Sunny Reds 1841, just down the road from Highmark Stadium. I was a little confused with days here because typically I got my guy Matt Warren on with me on our Wednesday episode, but got a lot of things going on this week. So I asked Matt if he could record with me on Monday and drop this on Tuesday. So I'm joined right now by my good buddy Matt Warren from SB Nation. What's up, man? How you doing?
Good. We were able to go see Thunderbolts this weekend, so I got my Marvel stuff on today. But it was really, really, really good. I would recommend it to everybody. Other than that, we just had a lot of family time, so it was good.
I haven't seen Thunderbolts yet. I do plan on seeing it relatively soon.
Mhm.
Before we get into today's show, it was a kind of a comeback for MCU. I feel this way, Matt. I didn't when the movies all originally started, when it came out, I wasn't an
Yeah.
MCU guy. It's just not typically my genre, my type of thing. But I eventually watched all of them chronologically in order, and I fell in love with the series. But
Mhm.
for me, it kind of really ended with Endgames. So many characters being written off, and the next few after that have been pretty disappointing, at least to me personally. Not maybe everybody feels like that. It feels like the drop off has been pretty significant. But did this kind of feel like a turnaround, a comeback? Like, was this better than the other ones since End Games?
I like the stakes in this one. Like sometimes Marvel has like a stakes problem where they have to keep amplifying, like what they're fighting for, and that they can get a little bit, I don't know, convoluted in those particular ways. So I liked how this movie tied everything together. I just thought it was really well written.
Mm.
One of the things about, say, like, I don't know, let's say Brave New World, the new Captain America movie that came out earlier this year. I thought they gave away too much in the trailer by sharing that Red Hulk was in it. Just by that, I know it was rewritten several times. Same thing with Falcon and Winter Soldier, the Marvel TV series. So again, that felt just like more convoluted than it had to because it was rewritten so many times. But like Deadpool and Wolverine, I thought was really great. I thought Thunderbolts was really great. I'm not as down on the Marvels as some other people. I
Mhm.
really loved Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, even though I think it was a little bit schmaltzy. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania kind of stunk because we knew it wasn't going to go anywhere with Kang eventually because of the stuff with Jonathan Majors. So like I think a lot of these movies post Endgame have been getting a little bit of more criticism than they needed. But
Okay.
I do feel like this one in particular is going to be great. I have very high hopes for the Fantastic Four movie, and we'll see what happens going forward with Doomsday. It could get like real rocky there with like the cast announcement that they made, and like there's going to be a lot to pack into that movie. So we'll see.
All right. Well, like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Mhm.
Hopefully, maybe if not this weekend, the weekend after that, I'll be able to see it. A couple things, then we're going to dive into today's episode
Sure.
and what we're doing. Let me kind of forewarn people a little bit. We're going to spend some time discussing Brandon Beane and some of his biggest misses as Buffalo Bills general manager throughout his tenure. I need to say this, and I'll say it again before we dive into Matt Warren and I, for the most part, are very happy with the job that Brandon Beane has done. We both think he's done, all in all, a very, very good job with the Buffalo Bills. They are perennially in the mix for a Super Bowl every year, and you don't do that without a very good general manager. And I don't want to make this, because we kind of Joe from Queens was on yesterday, and he was railing about the Bills wide receivers. Him and I were fighting pretty much the entire episode. I don't want this to sound like, this is just a bash Brandon Beane kind of show. It's certainly not, but we're going to be objective here. I'm not just we're not going to pander to fans all the time and everything is rosy and perfect. It's not. So we're going to spend some time today discussing Brandon Beane's history in terms of some of his biggest misses. But like I said, Matt and I both like and respect the job for the most part that Brandon Beane has done. I wanted to put that out there. Couple things too
We are.
before
I wanted just to say we are not bitching, Brandon. Please don't come
we're
for
not
us.
bitching. We're not going to say bitching 4 times in a minute and 5 seconds like his clip on WGR last week. That definitely was interesting, and it's still resonating with a lot of fans. People are still talking about that nearly a week later. Before that, though, two things. Number one, I don't talk about this on the show enough, man. And shame on me, okay? Shame on me for that. But over the weekend, the Buffalo Bandits are going to the finals for a fifth straight year. And they are trying to win a championship now for a third consecutive season. Just an absolute historic run in Buffalo sports history for the Buffalo Bandits and what they're doing. And man, what a feeling it must be to be a rabid, diehard Buffalo Bandits fan, to be able to experience championships and what it's like to play for championships, let alone win them. 5 in a row, man. That's like, it's becoming kind of old news. And I'm not among the faithful for the Bandits. I wish I was, man. I'm a bandwagon guy. I jump on when it gets to be the playoff time. But for their faithful, what a great feeling. And man, we're missing out. A lot of people who are just casual fans who live and die with the Buffalo Bills, maybe the Sabres as well. We're missing the boat here with the Buffalo Bandits because, dude, they are just going on an absolutely historic run. The best run in the history of probably of Buffalo sports, ain't it? It's crazy.
Yeah, I went to my first Bandits game a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
It was Fan Appreciation Night, the last night of the regular season. It was awesome in there. It was packed. It was, I think, their fifth sellout of the year. So obviously, they're doing something really, really well uh, with the Buffalo Bandits. My son plays lacrosse. We're gonna watch, I think, these NLL finals. Excuse me. It was really fun. He had a great time. It's fun to watch them. It's really fast paced. There's lots of hits. So if you're looking for like kind of football light in the springtime here, I would suggest it for anybody.
Yeah, 100%. So game one is Friday in Buffalo. Again, hopefully they bring it home. That'll be fantastic. Another thing too. Uh, so yesterday, if you watched the show or listened to the show, well, actually, if you listened to the show, you didn't notice anything on the audio side because I edited it. But if you watched on the video side live with Joe from Queens and I, had yet again more technical difficulties. The stupid StreamYard app just has a mind of its own. And about 3 minutes in, it decided to mute the microphone so I couldn't hear Joe and had to restart it. It was just anyway, the first 8 minutes was just a complete mess. And I bring that up because at the beginning of this show, you heard some music, and now on the YouTube side, you never usually hear any music. It's the new official intro for Talking Buffalo, and it's called "Old Friends" by this band, a Buffalo band called Orange Zest. I told the story yesterday, but I was a little flustered and annoyed because of what was going on with StreamYard. So I'll tell you and the audience real quick this fun, quick story. So last Friday, I went to Molly McGuire's. It's a dive bar in South Buffalo late on Friday night to meet up with my buddy Mike. And I don't like live music at bars, generally speaking. Like if I know I'm going to see a band, I'll go see them. But generally speaking, if I walk into a bar and there's a band playing, I usually walk right back out. I'm not a live music guy. It's just too loud. I go to the bar. I like to sit down and have a conversation, listen to the jukebox, but at least that's at a reasonable level. Have a couple beers, shoot the shit with my friends. And that's what I like. Anyway, this band's playing. It's loud. I'm annoyed right off the bat. But about 15, 20 minutes into their set, and I start to get over being mad that there's a band playing. They do a couple covers that I really like. They did a version of Creep by Radiohead, which was really good. They did a Jailhouse Rock by Elvis. Some really cool cover shit. And then they had some original songs sprinkled in. I never heard of this band. I don't know what the hell those songs are, obviously, but I was like, oh, this vibe's pretty good. It's pretty good. I ended up going home Friday night and I went on the Molly McGuire's Facebook page and I looked up who this band was because I didn't know their name or anything. And they're a bunch of like 20-something-year-old kids, you know what I mean? Or young men, just in this band's only like 2 years old. I looked them up on Facebook. Then I find the name. Their band's called Orange Zest, which is a weird name. But I go on Spotify and they got one song on there, and it's called Old Friends. I was like, damn, this is my jam. I played it for my wife, my son. We liked it. And I ended up reaching out to them over the weekend and telling them who I was. As we're talking Buffalo, I told them the story that I'm telling you right now and everyone out there. And they're cool. And I said, yo, I'd really like to use this song as my intro. Like I'd like to take 25, 30 seconds. I just like the vibe to it. And They were down. They were cool. So anyway, what you heard at the beginning is a song called "Old Friends" by Orange Zest, a Buffalo band, and I'm going to start trying to support some more local businesses and music and things like that here on Talking Buffalo. At the very end, stick around if you want to. At the very end of the show, when Matt and I are all done, I'm actually going to play this song in its entirety. Again, it's Orange Zest, and it's called "Old Friends." They're a Buffalo band. I'll link them in the show notes and all that stuff. But it was pretty cool to go into a bar, get annoyed that there was a band there, and by the end of the weekend, that band has a song that's now the official intro for Talking Buffalo. I just thought that was pretty wild, pretty cool, man. Props to me for reaching out to them, by the way. All credit to me. They were really cool dudes too, man. So good stuff.
I love live music out in bars. So I'm the opposite of you. So there we
Oh,
go.
you did? So you are a live music guy. So you don't mind not being able to
Yeah.
talk to your friends. You got to yell and scream at them if you. All right, man. I'm cool with that. Cool with that. Good stuff, man. Oh, by the way, too. So we're taping this Monday. This drops Tuesday. Happy birthday to me. Tomorrow's my birthday. Tuesday's my birthday. I want to thank myself for being born and being great and all that other stuff. But yeah,
Nice.
man, it's actually my birthday. I'm just getting old, bro. I'm at the point where I'm not telling you. I'm not telling anybody how old I am. Just not going to do it anymore. It's just say I'm old. I'm old, man. Buffalo news. You see, right before we went on the air, a little bit of media news. I don't know if you
No,
saw this yet. Lance
I didn't.
Zalsky, who's covered the Sabres beat for the last 7 years, is going to the Buffalo Bills beat now. He's going to be
Ooh,
reporting with the Bills alongside Jay and Catherine and Ryan. He's kind of, I don't want to say he's taking over from Mark because Mark Gaughan's
yeah.
irreplaceable, but he's joining that beat. So he's the Sabres, they're going to be looking for a new Sabres writer. No idea who that's going to be, but Lance is jumping over from the Sabres to the Bills. I wish him luck. That's not an easy that's not an easy transition. It's a little, I don't say it's puzzling. I'm sure Lance has personal and professional reasons for wanting to do it. I mean, the Bills are a much bigger team, but the Sabres are a smaller, I don't want to say smaller market because it's the same market, but there's less Sabres coverage than Bills coverage. There's a lot of really talented, good Bills beat reporters, and Lance is joining that mix. So, good luck to him, man.
Good luck. Yeah.
Mark Gaughan, a legend, is retiring. I
Mhm.
think it was like 43 years, something like that, or Matt, for
Yeah.
the Buffalo
Yeah,
News.
and he bounced around a little. Yeah, he did the Bills for the vast majority of his time at the Buffalo News, but he covered the UB Bulls for a while too, and then bounced back to the Bills beat. So, but yeah, Mark institution there. I was
Yeah.
really bummed when I heard that he was retiring, but I'm like obviously very happy for him. So yeah.
One of my all-time regrets on this show is I've had almost every Buffalo sports media person as a guest on the show at some point. There's very few that I haven't had on, and Mark's one of them. And it's not like he ever rejected me. I mean, it's on me. I didn't even reach out to him to ask him to be on. So I regret that. Maybe now that he's retired, I'll try to reach out and we can talk about his career, put that into some perspective. Again, I respect the hell out of him, one of the all-time legends here in the Buffalo sports media. All right. Anyway, let's dive into this. And again, one more time, a disclaimer. I'm making this really clear. Matt Moran and I both think that by and large, Brandon Beane has done a fantastic job. But today, for the purpose of this episode being objective here, I want to focus on Brandon Beane's biggest misses since coming over to the Bills in 2017. We'll kind of go in sections. And we'll
Sure.
start with draft. I only
Mhm.
got three that I consider big misses. There's been plenty of mid-round picks that don't pan out, stuff like that. But for me, once you get to past, say, night two of the draft, I really don't consider that a miss because it's a real, I mean, it's always a crapshoot, but it's a bigger crapshoot. The odds go down when you get to the fourth, fifth, sixth rounds, stuff like that. I got three guys here, three bad, pretty big misses for Brandon Beane with the draft. Let's start with a guy that's fresh in a lot of people's minds, Kyrie Elam, first round pick in 2022, which again, flipping it to the other side, when you want to talk about how great Brandon Beane has done for the most part, look at that draft in 2022. His haul there, James Cook, Khalil Shakir, Christian Benford. It was an incredible draft for the Buffalo Bills. But the first pick, the one he moved up for, round one, Kyrie Elam just absolutely flamed out. What would you like to add to that about Kyrie Elam? It's just, I don't know. Do you think that he had ample opportunity, like, to win the job? I do. Sometimes a
Mhm.
player will get picked and it's just like he gets buried in the chart, doesn't really get a full opportunity. There was always something, Matt, about Kyrie Love that seemed to rub Sean McDermott the wrong way. Maybe not rub him the wrong way, but he never gained Sean McDermott's trust. And I think that put him behind the 8 ball pretty much from day one. What do you think?
I mean, he clearly had a chance to win the job because somebody else from his draft class usurped him and took the job. So, I mean, it, they both had the same opportunities. They were both drafted at the same time, came into the same rookie mini camp, same first training camp, and all that stuff. And Christian Benford just outperformed Kyrie Elam. So, he definitely had the opportunity. I do think that he, probably had some friction with some of the coaching staff, and that's been documented a little bit. Um, but I don't think it's for lack of opportunity that he did not earn a starting spot. At
I
least an ongoing starting spot.
I agree. I remember he was just so maddeningly, inconsistent, and I'm not even just
Yeah.
talking about games. I'm talking about I remember training camps, and
Mm,
it's 2023, not 2024. I remember I went to back training camp practices, and the first day, he was sticking to everybody, man. He looked good. He looked the part. I remember a lot of people talking about him having a really strong training camp in 2023. He was looking really good. I remember he stood out
mhm.
in a positive way one practice. I mean, he was blanketing Stefan Diggs. Him and Stefan Diggs were going at it a lot. A lot of pushing, shoving, a lot of shit talking during training camp in 2023. Stefan would say, he was trying to make a better player, this and that. Anyway, he looked really good. Then the very next day, he was awful. I mean, he got flagged for what would have been like 3 or 4 penalties. You saw Sean McDermott visibly screaming at him at one point. He got pulled off with the starters because I think he had like 3 or 4 defensive holding penalties in about a 10 or 12 play stretch. Again, him and Diggs just going at it. And I know those are just 2 practices, but it just felt really symbolic to me of what Kyrie Elam was. It's like you can never depend on him. He had some good moments when he played. I know he had a couple interceptions in games and things like that. I remember the Cincinnati playoff game in 2022 where the Bills got smacked, and I
Yeah.
remember saying, Kyrie Elam, and I think it might have been Matt Milano, during my rants, they were the only 2 guys on defense that even showed up for that game. Like, he actually played all right. Trey White was getting torched. Um, Kyrie Elam was okay, but then he just had some bad moments, and you go back to the championship game last year, he looked lost. I mean, I
Oh
felt
yeah.
bad for him. It was, like, embarrassing how he looked out there when he got pressed into action after Christian Bedford went down. At least they traded him. They got something for him, which, by the way, if you're wondering, if you're keeping score at home for future reference, the Bills traded Elam, and I think it was a 6th for Dallas's 5th. And the
Mhm.
pick that they just used was on Jordan Hancock. So if Jordan Hancock turns out to be something for the Buffalo Bills, the Kyrie Elam trade has a lot to do with that. So anyway, Kyrie Elam for sure is a miss. The
Mhm.
second guy on my list I got is Boogie Basham, a second round pick. Obviously, the Bills double dipped right away at edge rusher. He was inactive more times in his rookie season than he played. I think he was inactive like 9 times in his rookie season. In year 2, he stunk. He had a flash or 2, but for the most part, he stunk. And they ended up getting traded. Traded to the Giants in a pick swap. 20, which by the way, also was this year, that pick swap, believe it or not. It was a couple
Yep.
years on the road, and that was this year. So again, if you're wondering or you want a fun fact, folks, Dorian Strong, the corner that they took at the beginning of the 6th round, they swapped a 6th and a 7th. That was the pick they ended up getting for in the Boogie Basham swap. So if Dorian Strong ends up doing something, then Boogie Basham ends up being great. But anyway, talk
Right.
about Boogie Basham, man. I mean, this was a guy, just a guy who's supposed to have a lot of pass rushing juice, and we never saw it.
Yeah, and I, he's one that really did he did get opportunities, obviously, but we never saw a lot of Boogie Basham on the
Right.
field. So that was, I mean, he must have been doing so poorly somewhere else in a meeting room or on the practice field because we just really didn't get to see a ton of Boogie Basham, in actual games.
Sean McDermott has a reputation for, whether it's earned or not, in some extent it is, but not liking to play rookies. The first two guys that we talked about kind of feel like perfect examples. Kyrie Elam in 2022, and then Boogie Basham year before that. Again, a second round pick. He wasn't even active for the. And it's not like the Bills had this ultimate dominant defensive line rotation of doom, as Joe from Queens likes to say. But yeah, the fact that he wasn't even getting reps or even dressing for a lot of
Mhm.
games, it did not take long for him to get in Sean McDermott's doghouse for whatever reason. And it just again it didn't pan out. And then my other guy, some people might push back a little bit on this, but Cody Ford, 2019,
Mhm.
a second round pick. He stunk at right tackle. They tried to make him a right tackle. And I remember him being a really good pick at the time. It felt like a really good pick. In the second round, a lot of people were saying, kind of like Landon Jackson, he could have been a first round guy. Landon went in the third. But anyway,
Mhm.
a lot of
Right.
people were like, 44 was a late round first guy, and they got him in the second round. Feels like a steal. Well, didn't turn out to be that way. He stunk at right tackle. They moved him inside the guard, and he was eh, pretty guard as well. 29 starts over the course of 3 seasons, I believe, and then he was traded to Arizona. I think they got a 5th round pick for him, but yeah, another one, man. Cody Ford, a pretty disappointing guy.
I mean, he was mocked to the Bills in the first round that year. I mean, like,
Yeah,
and then they get him in the second round, which again we thought was a steal. I remember the common thought process at the time was even if he doesn't work out at right tackle, I know the Bills are listing him at right tackle. Even if he doesn't work out at right tackle, he'll be a really good guard. Like he's just got a lot of
yeah.
power. He's a big dude. Like he'll be fine at guard. And just like no matter where they put him, right tackle, left guard, right guard, he just never settled in for Buffalo. And yeah, that I think that was a miss. Especially like usually you think, top of the draft offensive lineman, usually you can find at least some place for them on your offensive line, and Buffalo was not able to do that with Cody Ford.
Yeah, by the way, a tip of the cap to Anthony Marino, my buddy, and he's been on the podcast in a while, but from Buffalo Rumblings, he had a post about draft misses and included all 3 of those guys. So tip of the cap. Which, by the way, I don't know if you can see this on the video side. I'm being a homer today here. So I got a Josh Allen MVP cap. So bitch about it. Call me a homer all you want, everybody. It's a pretty dope hat, though.
I've got I've got one more draft bust that I do want to talk about, and I know you don't typically like using like late round draft picks, but I do think that the Matt Araiza pick was a big miss by Brandon Beane that needs to be
Okay,
addressed.
go ahead.
Um, when a good chunk of NFL teams had Ariza completely off their board because of those allegations, and the Bills didn't know anything about it, it 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 feels like a miss by the Bills, not necessarily like just because they picked a guy that eventually was going to cause such a firestorm for them,
Sure.
and were really caught unaware of the whole situation, at least according to the reporting by Tim Graham of the Athletic at the time, and like it just feels like, despite the fact that it was a 6th round pick and like you can't really count on those, like it feels like they were caught blindsided and flat-footed by that, and I think that that needs to be at least in this conversation.
I agree 100%. That's actually a really good point. Let's take a real quick break. Come back on the other side. We'll get to some free agents, and I got a couple trades as well. All right, back here with Matt Warren from SB Nation.
Mhm.
We're going over some of Brandon Beane's biggest misses. We talked about the draft. I had 3 draft picks. Matt brought up Matt Araiza. I think that's a good one as well. We could add that to the list. Free agency. We'll start with the most obvious one. And it's tough. This is a tough one. Von Miller, I'm talking about, of course, because I have a difficult time blaming Brandon Beane for taking a swing. I don't, it's hard to bitch about a GM, you need to be more aggressive. You need to go for it. This is your Super Bowl window. You got your all world quarterback, and you don't want to take big swings. So I have a hard time criticizing him for taking a big swing. And it's also not his fault that Von Miller tore his ACL because in 2022, was it 2022? His first year, right? Yeah.
Yep, yep,
Von
yep,
Miller, he looked like the kind of player that you gave big money to until the
yep.
Detroit game when he tore his ACL. So it sucks. But after that injury, he clearly was never the same player again. He was useless in 2023. I mean, utterly useless. And they shouldn't have even had him active. I mean, I felt like him being active ultimately was actually hurting the team.
Mm.
2024, he started out pretty good. He's all right. But we kept waiting for the ramp up. Like, this isn't a bad contract. This isn't a bad signing yet, because if Von Miller has a good January and the Bills get to a Super Bowl, that's the goal. That's why you bring him in. Then it's a great signing. I don't give a shit. Just get to a Super Bowl and it ends up being a great signing. But you get to the playoffs and he had a fumble recovery against the Ravens. But look, man, the ball just bounced right to him, right? He really didn't do anything. That was more, I can't even say it was DeMar Hamlin making a great play, because it was more, he grabbed Lamar's ankle and Lamar pretty much just dropped the football. But anyway, that's not my point. My point is this: he played like 25% of the snaps against
Right.
Baltimore and also against the Kansas City Chiefs. What are we doing here? I mean, the guy was healthy. You ramped him up. That's what we thought all season long for the playoffs. And he got to the playoffs. And for whatever reason, Sean McDermott, Bobby Babbitt did not play him any more than they did. So ultimately, it was a bad signing. And you could also say, the guy had an ACL injury before. He was getting long in the tooth even before the Bills signed him. Big money doesn't work out. I mean, you got to, again, how much of the fault is Brandon Beane? I don't know, but it's a miss. It's a miss, man. What's your thoughts on that?
It was a risky signing at the time.
Mhm.
We knew that. It was an expensive signing at the time. We knew that. But I mean, at the same time, like $120 million deal or whatever. And so, like, yeah, it was a risk I think worth taking, but ultimately a miss. Yes.
Yeah, it has to be a miss. But again, I struggle putting this in the category because I want my GM to take aggressive swings.
Yeah. Mhm.
I'd rather him miss on aggressive swings than be conservative and just be content to try to be in the mix. You know what I mean? Every single year and not quote unquote go for it. And he did with that move. It just didn't work. Vernon Butler, big miss. 2 years, $15 million contract. He sucked, dude. He was not effective whatsoever. It was a terrible signing, and he was a former first round pick and
Mhm.
with the Carolina Panthers and that pipeline, and they tried to, strike lightning a little bit. Maybe him coming to Buffalo, a fresh start was going to be him reigniting his career, jump-starting his career, and it didn't work. He was terrible.
Yep. 24 games, 29 tackles, not something you want for 7.5 million per season. But like I mean, we had this conversation like last week with Elijah Moore. Like he's the kind of player you want to take a chance on. But at 2 years, 15 million, that's a little bit more than taking a chance. It's really committing to that player.
Sure is. 28, I believe it was 2018. Next one, Trent Murphy. Got a 3-year contract, 22.5 million. I remember this being touted as such a big, potentially defensive altering signing for the Buffalo Bills.
Mhm.
And it wasn't. It wasn't, dude. Again, it's a miss. I mean, there's not really a lot. Some of these guys, I really don't know how much you could dive into. It was a
Well,
miss. It was a miss for the
yeah,
Bills.
yeah, Murphy, like I had red flags coming in. He was coming off of a significant injury. He had a previous PED suspension, so you weren't sure like what was him and what was the juice and stuff like that. Like I use juice a little bit colloquially here, but like it's uh, he just it seemed like a weird signing at the time because we're like, oh, we're supposed to be super excited about this Trent Murphy signing, and because like that, I mean, if you remember, that was the offseason that they added Star Latulele and Vontae Davis too, and kind of this like little defensive roster refresh, and just like I don't know Murphy and I mean, Latulele I think was solid. Like I don't think he's a miss per se. It was a lot of money for a guy like Latulele, but like Murphy was supposed to be that game changer next to Latulele, and that did not work out at all.
Yeah, and you mentioned him. I didn't even have him on the list initially, but since you mentioned him, Vontae Davis, rest in peace.
Yeah.
It was a miss. Let's just agree on that. We move on. It was a miss. The next one I have on my list is actually a combination. And when you look at the contract, you're like, well, that wasn't really a lot of money. It wasn't that it was an enormous financial investment, but in 2023, the combination of Deontay Hardy and Trent Sherfield, the Bills had a really good and deep receiving core, like from like 2019 through like 2022. And you still had Stephon Diggs, you still had Gabe Davis, but you really didn't have much behind him. I mean, Khalil Shakir was coming off his rookie season, and Deontay Hardy was their first free agent signing. I remember that. And he got a multi-year contract. And then they signed later on Trent Sherfield, who it was kind of like he was lacking opportunity with Miami. He was stuck behind Tyreek and Waddle, and it was like he could break out with the Buffalo Bills. I remember a lot of stories being about him being a potential breakout candidate. Anyway, Deontay Hardy gave them nothing at receiver. I think he had like 15 catches for the season, like a buck 50. Now he did have one
Mhm.
contribution. The regular season finale, the punt return was a key play when the Bills beat the Dolphins to win the AFC
Mhm.
East, the 2 seed on the last Sunday night game of the season. But all in all, Hardy was a major disappointment. He got cut after 1 year. And Trent Sherfield, I really wanted to like him. Again, he did do one thing, the Miami game, that tip ball in the air, he kept his feet in the end zone. He came down with the touchdown. It was a big play. But by and large, he was terrible. And two enormous drops against the Kansas
Mhm.
City Chiefs in their divisional round loss. The expectation was Hardy and Sherfield were really going to bolster the wide receiving room, and they didn't. And you could make an argument if Sherfield makes those plays or they make a couple plays, this could have been a Super Bowl team in 2023. So for that reason, I don't know if you do you agree with me to be able to put them on the list because they weren't the biggest contracts per se, but Sherfield and Hardy, I got them both as big misses on my free agent list.
Yeah, I mean, Sherfield made less than $2 million, so like I definitely would agree with you on Hardy for
Okay.
especially because then he didn't take the pay cut the next year and they released him. But like, I don't know, I've got bigger misses on my list than those ones. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Next
Same
guy
thing
on
with the guy you're about to talk about. Same thing with the next guy you're going to talk about because I
my
don't think
OJ.
this was like, well, yeah, I don't think it was a huge like financial commitment. It was 1 year,
Oh,
$3.5 million.
agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. And what 2.5 was guaranteed though. And he didn't even make he got
Yep.
cut in summer. So yeah, OJ Howard's a miss.
Hmm.
Didn't really matter though. You're probably right. Because when you say big misses, I suppose to be classified as a big miss, it has to matter. You know what I mean? Like I feel
Yeah.
like
Like,
Trent Sherfield to me, and you're right about the money with Sherfield, but Sherfield being on the field
yeah.
instead of someone else against the Chiefs and dropping balls, to me, that makes it a big miss. But to your point, OJ Howard, despite it was kind of, I would say it was a little bit embarrassing, not like hugely,
Oh
but it
yeah.
was kind of embarrassing to sign a guy, which by the way, he came right after Von Miller. I remember that because like, oh, they got Von Miller. Oh yeah, by the way, they also got OJ Howard. And that was pretty high. He was a former first round pick. He
Uh-huh.
got guaranteed money and he got cut at training camp. So
Yeah, I liked the OJ Howard signing a lot. I mean, there were all the rumors that the Bills were going to move to that two tight end set that offseason, and that didn't really materialize until they got Dalton Kincaid, and by then Ken Dorsey was kind of, holding on by a thread there. So like, I, the OJ Howard signing was probably worse for Ken Dorsey than anybody else.
one more guy got on my list, Josh Norman, one
Hmm.
year, $6 million deal. He was really good with Washington for a while, fell off, came to the Bills again, kind of like one of those. Maybe he'll kickstart his career or reignite his career, like with Vernon Butler. He was bad. He was
Yep.
not good with the Bills, and of course, the lasting image of Josh Norman will always be Derrick Henry just stiff arming him to hell and running him over. But dude, that was just a really bad. That was a bad signing, man. It
Yeah.
was.
On a play that didn't even count, if I remember correctly. I think it came back because of the holding or something. But yeah, he made $5.8 million for 4 games. Like that sucks.
Yeah.
So
I had a couple guys on my honorable mention list. I had two of them. Damian Harris, who again, it was an injury. He was a good. I thought he was going to have a bigger role on this team, but he had an
mhm.
injury history too. So I had maybe in hindsight that wasn't the greatest signing. And Vlad Ducasse, a terrible, terrible offensive lineman, 2017, 2018, for the Bills. Did I miss anybody?
Well, they got 21 starts out of Vlad Ducasse. So I mean, he wasn't like I mean, just because he was the best available. Don't get me wrong, but like
Were they
the
two
Bills didn't have a
starts?
great line. I did have a few others I wanted to throw onto the pile here. AJ Klein, his first contract with the Bills, 3 years, $18 million. So he got paid $13 million for 15 starts,
Good lord.
110 tackles and 5 sacks. And that was with his first contract. They cut him before the third year, then ended up bringing him back like I don't know, like 6 times. So that one was a little bit steep for me, especially because of the fact that he only started for 15 games. What do you think about the AJ Klein signing there, Pat?
I think it was a terrible signing. I think I still can't believe the best idea they could come up with in the playoff was getting him off the couch. And again, going back to Sean McDermott, maybe not just trusting rookies. I
Mhm.
just how much worse could Dorian Williams? I don't care if he would have been clueless out there. I don't care if you had to go into the defensive huddle and draw on the dirt where he was supposed to line up or who he was supposed to cover on a play. I just can't fathom a world where Dorian Williams would not have been more effective in that role given the circumstance than AJ Klein.
Yeah,
It's
at least he was making the minimum for that one. But like, when they signed him to that fat contract, you expected him to come in and make an impact. And obviously I mean, maybe he did in like the meeting room, getting some of those rookies up to speed and stuff like that back in
nah,
2020.
he
But
didn't do shit, dude. He didn't do shit. He was terrible, terrible,
uh,
terrible. I love it though.
I've got,
I love you bringing the bonus negativity here on this
I've
podcast.
got one more. Don't worry, I've got one more.
Okay.
When they matched Ryan Bates' RFA tender from the Chicago Bears, 4 years,
Ooh,
$17 million for Ryan Bates. He was paid $12 million for 15 starts over 2 seasons, and then traded for a fifth rounder. So, um, he started that year that they matched it. I get that, and then he played the next year, but didn't start. He was a reserve. So they valued depth at the offensive line position to protect quarterback Josh Allen. But paying Ryan Bates $12 million for 15 starts, not great value.
no, I agree. That's a good one too. I got two trades that I'm going to put on here. The first one was just last year, and I'm going to again preface this by saying I have a difficult time blaming Brandon Beane for taking a swing, just like with Von Miller. The Bills needed help at wide receiver. Funny to say that because Brandon Beane over the last week and his defensive wide receivers, he's talking about well, he's talking about the money and he's talking about the receivers, just being good and this and that. But yeah, you go to 2022, and at the end of the year, he's got Cole Beasley and John Brown coming off the couch to try to help this team. Last season, the depth was so bad and underperforming, and we saw what happened in the Baltimore and the Houston games, especially when Khalil Shakir did not play against Houston and how bad the receivers were. It forced Brandon Beane's hand, and he had to go and make a trade. So again, I have a tough time blaming him for taking a swing. They give up a third rounder for Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper he didn't work out. It's just he had some moments. He had a couple nice plays. He had the touchdown in his very first game. He had a really nice acrobatic catch where he got hurt on it. I don't know. Was he washed up? Why he didn't play more? I'll never know. But kind of like going to the playoffs with Von Miller, where it was like I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
Mhm.
Like at the end of the season, he wasn't even getting targets. And I'm like, well, okay. The Bills aren't, Joe Brady doesn't want to show anything for the playoffs. He wants to almost hide Amari Cooper. He stayed hidden in the playoffs for the most part as well. The one time they go to him, Joe Brady was one of the worst play calls I've seen from Joe Brady. It's a 3rd and 10, a screen. That's the right time. And the last drive to do a screen, bubble screen to Amari Cooper. Kind of
Mhm.
puzzling. But anyway, my point was this. They took a swing. It didn't work out. So to me, that's a definition of a miss. And the draft was just last week. And we're talking about, maneuvering around all these mock drafts, moving up, moving down, trying to get an extra top 100 pick. The Bills had a top 100 pick. It would have been
Mhm.
pick 94 that they gave up for Cleveland. It would have been nice to have another third rounder in this draft. And it's easy to be an armchair quarterback after the fact, I know. But do you agree? For those reasons, you give up a third and you take a swing. That's great. But it was a miss. It was a miss. Did he really help the Bills?
Yeah, it's hard to say that he did on the level of a third round pick. Um, yeah, again, we said like it's not Brandon Beane's fault that Von Miller got hurt, so we at least have to mention that with Amari Cooper too.
Sure.
He was dinged up while he was here a little bit, but again, you're trading for a 30-something-year-old receiver. He's going to get nicked up, dinged up, something like that. So yeah, I mean, they needed to do it. Like, I'm not arguing that. Like, they needed to try something. Like, their wide receiver group was not going to work out. So I'm glad they did something, but it was obviously a miss. Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely a miss. And is that to you one of the big mysteries of the Bills 2024 season is like why as the season went on could not Amari Cooper be a bigger factor? He was far and away the most talented receiver on this football team, on this roster, and he far and away had the best track record of any receiver on this roster. Yet at no point did he become a consistent focal
Mhm.
point of the offense. And he was hurt for a span, but still, he got healthier later in the season. And into the playoffs, he was reportedly fine. Is that a big mystery to you? Like why they couldn't factor him more into this offense? It was just weird to me.
Historically, wide receiver trades midseason don't do particularly well that during that season. But Amari Cooper did when he was traded previously. So like he had a track record of being able to adjust to a new offense. And so I don't know if it was a Josh Allen thing. I don't know if it was a Joe Brady thing. I don't know if it was an Amari Cooper thing or an injury thing. But yes, it's definitely one of the biggest mysteries of the season. Same thing with why Von Miller didn't get ramped up. As we talked about previously, like why is he playing 24% of the snaps in the AFC Championship game?
Yeah. The other trade I got Wyatt Teller. The Bills traded Wyatt
Yeah.
Teller and a seventh rounder to the Cleveland Browns for a fifth and a sixth round pick. Basically, Wyatt Teller to the Bills was just disposable throwaway piece to try to just get a little bit, late draft ammunition. And all Wyatt Teller went on to do after going to Cleveland is become a two-time All-Pro, not Pro Bowler, All-Pro. The big difference there.
Hmm.
That's a big, big miss. Maybe a bonus, a fun fact here too, by the way. So I said it was just for people out there who are wondering, because I always like to know how trades turn out. You say, "Oh, I traded this player for a sixth and a conditional seventh." I always kind of like to go back afterwards to see what came of those trades.
Hmm.
So they got, like I said, a fifth and a sixth, and they traded a seventh and Teller. With the sixth rounder, they used that on Tyler Bass. So they got Tyler Bass in the trade with Wyatt Teller. And the fifth was part of the deal. They would have got the deal done anyway. So I'm not going to say this was a key part, but the fifth rounder was part of the Stephon Diggs trade deal. The Bills gave up a first, a fourth, a fifth and then a fourth the following year too for Diggs and a seventh. So anyway, that was part of the trade. And here's a bonus fun fact. Along with Stephon Diggs, they got that seventh round pick. That seventh rounder ended up being Dane Jackson. So I had a little bit of history with the Bills. So Wyatt Teller was kind of indirectly connected to Dane Jackson, I suppose, and Tyler Bass. Doesn't change the fact, though, that shit was a miss. Wyatt Teller, man.
Yeah, the Wyatt Teller stuff, man, because like he wasn't going to make the roster that year, and so is I don't know if that's on the coaching staff or if it's on on
How's it
their
not,
evaluation, their development. What?
how's it not on the coaching staff? He's an all pro. Are you going to make a roster?
Well, well, no, but that's my point. It's like it's hard to blame Brandon Beane when like the coaching staff was just like, nah, we don't need him anymore. We're going to cut him. So like, yes, obviously it was a miss because he developed into something really, really well. But I'm laying it more on the coaching staff than Brandon Beane at this point.
That's a really good point. I never thought of it from that perspective. You're actually right. This could have potentially went down as one of Brandon Beane's all-time great hits. This could have been like
Yeah,
equivalent to Christian Benford in the sixth round, who's become one of the best young corners. Wyatt Teller in whatever round he was, the fifth, sixth round. I don't remember what the hell he was, but he was a late round pick, and he could have become one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL for the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, the talent and the skill set was there. So you're right. If we were doing a Sean McDermott miss, this would absolutely be, assuming that Sean McDermott's the one that pulled the trigger on saying, this guy's expendable. We don't need him. It was a miss. So you're right. Maybe Brandon Beane had the foresight to draft him. So I'm wrong here. You win this
there's
argument. Point you.
there is another trade that you didn't talk about. It was another wide receiver trade. It was Kelvin Benjamin, third round pick back in 2017.
Oh my God.
Um, right. I mean, it was Brandon Beane's first regular season. He didn't control that draft, but like it was the regular season where they traded for Benjamin. He came in. They did end up picking up his fifth year option too, and so he ended up costing $8.5 million in 2018 and was cut mid-season. So they traded a third round pick and paid him $9 million. It's the worst trade Brandon Beane's ever done, and I
Yeah.
don't think it's particularly close. But like Benjamin had a couple key like plays, but I mean, he was not the thing that got them over the hump for sure.
No, so he's not the reason why the Bills broke the drought, is what you're saying there.
Right. And then the Panthers ended up taking Rashawn Golden, cornerback out of Tennessee, and he's completely washed out of the league. So it didn't really matter too much.
But yeah, that was definitely a bad trade for the Bills. I got two, I guess we'll call these in-house contract extensions that have been
Yeah.
not good for the Bills. One of them is Dawson Knox. And look,
Mhm.
Dawson Knox had a nice little run. Okay. He deserved a nice little contract, but he got a 4-year, $52 million extension in 2022. And I guarantee you the Bills wish that they didn't do that
Yeah.
today. They got him to take a pay cut last year to kind of redo his deal, whatever you want to call it. He's uncuttable right now. Not that the Bills should want to cut him. Let's be clear about that. Dawson Knox is not a scrub either. I want to be clear when I say that.
Right.
But it's a bad contract. And because of that contract, even if they want, they draft Dalton Kincaid. Let's say if it was, we're going to draft Kincaid in the first round of 2023, and maybe in 2024, we'll move on from Dawson Knox. But that contract didn't allow them to do that. And I'm not saying they should have. I'm just saying it was there. It's a bad
Mhm.
contract, dude. That's what I'm getting at. 4 years, $52 million. That's too much money for a player like Dawson Knox.
And then I know some cost is like some cost, but then they made it worse by drafting Dalton Kincaid and taking away Dawson Knox's snaps. So yes.
Sure. Yeah. Then the other guy I had was Jordan Poyer.
Mhm.
2 years ago, he signed a 2-year, $12.5 million extension. Everybody thought he was gone. I remember it being a huge surprise that he re-signed with the Bills. End of the day, what happened was the market that he was hoping for simply wasn't there for him. He kind of, it was a, not a well, it was not a great secret that he wanted to go to Miami 2 years ago, but Miami just didn't want to pay him. He wanted to go to live in Florida. Long story, you get it. Anyway, didn't work out. He re-signs with the Bills, 2 years, 12.5 million. He at that point, and you'd be hard pressed to find a bigger Jordan Poyer fan for the Bills than me. I feel Poyer and Hyde, that combination was so largely responsible for this era of Buffalo Bills football, both on the field stuff, leadership, heart and soul of the football team, those two guys. So I loved me some Jordan Poyer, but by 2023, he was just not the same player anymore. Injuries, age, lots of factors. He was a shell of what he was, and I think you saw that on the field. He just wasn't good. And then he got cut. He got cut. He went to Miami this past year, and Miami fans are not missing him right now. Let's just put it that way. Again, great player, great dude, but it just his best football was so far behind him. The Bills should have just moved on 2 years ago from him, and they didn't. So 2 years, 12.5 million, terrible contract. I lost you. You there?
Yep. Sorry, my mic.
You got me nervous. I was like, please tell me this is not a StreamYard issue again.
No, my mic died. It's my fault.
All right. So anyway, yeah, to your point, I mean, there's not really much to add to that. You agree? It's just it was a bad re-signing, a bad contract at the time. Is football. His good days were well behind him at that point. That's all I got. Which, by the way, it sounds like a lot, but if we did a Brandon Beane hits, it would be a lot longer than these misses. So again, for people who are just saying that Matt and I are just trying to be negative on the Bills, no, we're trying to tell both sides of the story. So
and like we don't even talk about the contracts that they didn't give out, like Brandon Beane didn't give out, because that Tremaine Edmonds deal that he signed in Chicago, I think a lot of Bills fans were happy that Buffalo didn't give Tremaine Edmonds that contract. I'm sure that if we went down the list, there's a lot more contracts that we could have that conversation about too. I think he's been very judicious about which players to sign and re-sign. I thought everything that he did in 2024 offseason to set up for the 2025 offseason, I think was really, really smart. Whether it was the pay cut for Von Miller, the release of Mitch Morse, or letting Gabe Davis walk, which is another one we could add to that Tremaine Edmonds conversation. Like I think he's been very, very smart about managing the salary cap. He's starting to get a little over leveraged, where it's going to be a problem if somebody has to retire early, like when we had the Ewood situation a while ago. But I certainly don't fault him for leveraging right now while Josh Allen is peak Josh Allen.
Yeah. Listen, you got to get to a Super Bowl, man. I said this on the show yesterday. Just like with Josh Allen and with Sean McDermott, I think the legacy of Brandon Beane as Buffalo Bills general manager is ultimately going to be tied to, did they at least get to a Super Bowl? Did they get over the hump? Did they win an AFC conference championship? I ultimately, that needs to be what it's all about. And look, we can't sit here in early May and talk about it being a successful off season because we got to watch the games. And a year from now, you and I can converge here and talk about this off season. But what I will say is Brandon Beane certainly didn't sit on his ass and say, well, we were a field goal away from going to the Super Bowl last year. We're just going to run it back. They kind of did on offense, but defensively, obviously a lot of changes. So they go get a receiver in Josh Palmer that I kind of like, and I think he's going to be a good fit here. Elijah Moore, we'll see what happens with him. You got a potential superstar edge rusher if he could stay healthy in Bosa. I mean, Bosa's been, when healthy, one of the best edge rushers in the league. So potentially a star move, and they put a lot of attention to the defense. And they got a corner who could run like the wind in the first round, a lot of work on the defensive line. So I mean, Brandon Beane has been busy this offseason. That's for damn sure. So a lot of credit for that. Before we get out of here real quick, two teams that I kind of want to, like at the end of these episodes when I have you on, we'll kind of go through a couple teams each time and talk about their off seasons that are, Bills are in competition with. The Ravens and the Bengals I wanted to talk about today. I wrote down a list. When it comes to the Ravens, they re-signed their fullback Patrick Ricard. They signed three guys of note, one of them being DeAndre Hopkins. So they go get a wide receiver. How much juice does he have left? I don't know. But they also got a new left tackle, Ronnie Stanley, and a left guard in Ben Cleveland. And I love their first two draft picks, Malachi Starks and Mike Green. I think I was talking about this on Twitter. I think you can make a case that the Ravens may have the best roster in the AFC, and add into the line and get in a wide receiver, even if his past his prime. Two good defensive players in the draft. You kind of get that feel to you? Like, do you consider the Ravens the best roster in this conference right now?
I don't know. I really don't know if they upgraded at all this offseason. And that's so for me, like, yes, obviously they were really talented last year. And so you think I do think they have a better roster than, say, Kansas City right now, top to bottom. Kansas City is aging out. Obviously the Ravens have, a really good general manager in Eric DaCosta. I like what they do on the whole, but I don't know, like, I just don't see where they really got better outside of Malachi Starks this offseason.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I still, well, I'll put it this way. I think they had maybe the best roster in the AFC last year.
Yeah, okay.
They didn't get pillaged, you know what I mean? Like, they didn't lose any real significant players to another team in free agency or having to cut somebody because of a bad contract. So you're probably right. Like, how much they improved on paper, not much, maybe not even at all. But the fact that they didn't get worse to me, and coupled with the fact that I think they have on paper probably, you know what? It's really tough, man, because the Bills are right there. And now I want to be this episode, we've been haters, and now I want to be called a homer because I can make a case that the Bills have the best roster in the conference as well.
Well, the Bills have the best offensive line, I think, in the NFL. But so like the Ravens add Ronnie Stanley, like we'll see how he performs in Baltimore. Like they have to continue to help Lamar Jackson. I don't want to be the guy that hates on Lamar Jackson, but they really just need someone to help him in the postseason. And Derrick Henry wasn't able to do it apparently. So maybe that's a coaching miss more than it's like a player roster management miss, but they need to help Lamar Jackson out in those big moments and help him be successful. And that's obviously what they tried to do with Ronnie Stanley, DeAndre Hopkins, and things like that.
Yeah. All right. That's fair. Let's move over to Cincinnati real quick. So their big move was extending their own. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins get those monster contracts. They re-signed Mike Gesicki. They re-signed their defensive tackle, B.J. Hill. They re-signed a guy that we talked about earlier in the show, Cody Ford, Joseph Osai. So they re-signed their own players. In terms of additions, Perini, the running back, they signed him. Oren Burks, a linebacker, Cam Sample, and edge guys. They drafted Shamar Stewart, which I was very against going in this draft. He was on my do not draft list. I don't care how physically gifted you are. Again, 3 straight years where you have 1.5 sacks each year. I ain't drafting you in the first round. Hell no. They took a linebacker in round 2, a guard in round 3. The holes that felt like that was on this team last year are still there. Like, the
Yep.
offensive line is sus. I love using that word now. It's a young word, but sus. And, the defense just ain't that good, man, and they really didn't add much to it. So, this is one of those, if you think Josh Allen doesn't get enough help, Bills fans, I kind of feel like, I don't know, Burrow's got two of the best receivers in the league, but I'm talking about the team as a whole.
Yeah.
Like, if you consider defense help for your quarterback, taking the ball away, like the Bills had the best plus minus in the NFL, that's helping Josh Allen. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Cincinnati, it's Joe Burrow, two stud receivers, and go be an MVP every week because that's how you're going to win football games, Joe Burrow. You know what I'm saying? I still got those vibes with them. Nothing's changed.
Right. Their biggest change on defense was firing Lou Anarumo and bringing in
Yeah.
Al Golden from Notre Dame as defensive coordinator. They're hoping that that's going to solve their problems. But you mentioned the linebacker they took in the second round. Dude's 25-year-old off-ball linebacker. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me how they built this defense and how they try to retool this defense this offseason. Like, they knew the defense was horrible and all they did was get a new play caller. And like, he might be awesome, but like, you also need horses in the barn, man. And like, and plus they went and pissed off Trey Hendrickson, just like trying to nickel and dime him and not giving him a contract too. So that defense is still a mess. And to your point, they got a new offensive line coach. They also changed that. They're hoping that makes Cody Ford better. They're like, he's still the starter at guard for them. Like, so I don't see where they improved on the stuff that was their Achilles heel last year. It's interesting because like people talk about like, oh, the Bengals are giving Joe Burrow all that help. What you said. They have like the best wide receiver combo in the league. They've got Gesicki back, and the Bills did it a different way where they built the offensive line to protect Josh Allen and allow him to deal. And I'm glad the Bills did it the way that the Bills did it. And I'm not a Bengals fan right now.
That's not talked about enough, what you just said. Building an offensive line to protect the quarterback is as important or maybe more important than going to get skilled receivers. Because if you're on your ass, if you're running for your life, if you're not getting consistent time to throw the football, it doesn't matter at the end of the day.
And Allen's way better at creating that time than Joe Burrow is. So like you would think they would want to do even more than the Bills did for
yeah. And look, I also want to be clear too in early May that this is not a burial of the Cincinnati Bengals.
Right.
I still like last year. I remember we talked about it almost weekly on this show. I did not want nothing to do with the Bengals potentially in the playoffs last year because of Joe Burrow, how dangerous he could be, and the receivers, and the fact that they've manhandled the Bills the last couple times that they've played them. So I'm still concerned about them in a way, but in another way, in part because I think Christian Benford's become such a good corner that I now have confidence. I don't care who he's lined up on, that he's going to do a good job. And if Hairston becomes a good player, and just the Bills hopefully be having a better pass rush, they better with all the goddamn money and resources that they put in there, that the defense will be all right. So I'm less worried potentially about the Bengals now than I was, say, during the season last year. They're still a threat because they have an MVP caliber quarterback and some great skill players. But yeah, I don't think if I'm a Bengals fan, this was not the offseason that I personally would have been hoping for.
I'm worried about the Bengals in one game. I'm not necessarily worried about the Bengals over the course of the entire season. Like, if that makes sense. Like, they can absolutely explode and score 60 points on you in a game. But can they do that every single week and then have their defense hold them under 60 points?
Yeah, I agree. Good point. All right, it's going to do it for this episode with Matt. Make sure you're following him on X. I'm starting to say X instead of Twitter now. X and, of course, Blue Sky as well. Both of them at Matt Rich Moran. Check out SB Nation, more specifically if you're a Bills fan. Buffalo Rumblings. I appreciate you as always, buddy.
Have a good one.
And I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to end this show playing the full version of that song that I talked about at the beginning. That's going to be a clip of it's going to be the intro for this show going forward. But the band is called Orange Zest, and this song is called Old Friends. And again, this is a local Buffalo band, so go support local music here in Buffalo. Talk to you guys.